The world had seen armies before, marching columns, cavalry charges, rifle lines stretching into horizons. But nothing had prepared humanity for the metallic beasts that rose from the smoke of the 20th century. The tanks, the armored carriers, the mechanized infantry vehicles, all forged in the furnace of industrial ambition, became the new titans of war. And in the darkest years between 1939 and 1945, they carved their shadows across continents. This is the story of those war machines, and the men who commanded them, feared them, and ultimately watched them fall into ruin. Chapter 1. The Birth of Steel Beasts. When German panzers first rolled across the Polish frontier at dawn on September 1, 1939, the earth trembled with a new kind of terror. Their engines growled like mechanical predators, their treads crushed the soil with unrelenting rhythm, and their cannons belched fire into the morning haze. The Poles had cavalry, bravery, and experience. But against armored divisions moving with mathematical precision, valor alone was not enough. Inside Panzer III No. 227, Unteroffizier Lucas Weber gripped the rim of the turret as the tank surged forward. He was young, too young perhaps, but war cared nothing for age. His commanding officer, Oberfeldwebel Kraus, barked coordinates through the intercom. 30 degrees left, enemy anti-tank gun. Weber swung the turret. The world blurred past the periscope. Trees, fences, fleeing civilians, until the enemy gun came into view. A sharp flash erupted from its muzzle. The round screamed past the tank's hull, missing by inches. The German gunner fired back. A plume of fire swallowed the Polish emplacement. That was the moment Weber realized the truth. Tanks did not just change battles, they dictated them. Chapter 2. Across the continent of fire within months, armored warfare had rewritten the map of Europe. Denmark fell, Norway collapsed, the Low Countries were swallowed. And then France. The titan of the previous war crumbled beneath Blitzkrieg's lightning wheels. Yet not all victories came easily. In the French village of Saint-Aubin, the Char B-1 tank Bourrasque sat in ambush behind a stone barn. Commandant René Marchand wiped the sweat from his brow as the sound of German tracks drew near. "These are not machines," he muttered. "They are storms." His radio operator, Arnaud, looked at him with fear. "Then we must be thunder." As the first German Panzer IV appeared at the bend in the road, Marchand gave the order. The 75mm hull gun roared. The shell smashed into the German tank, ripping it open like a metal fruit. Flames poured from the wreck. Another Panzer approached. Another shot fired. Another enemy destroyed. For a moment, the French machine, slow, heavy, outdated in many ways, stood like a steel wall against the tide. But the enemy was not alone. 3 more panzers emerged, circling Bourrasque like wolves. The Char B-1 fought valiantly, but its armor cracked under repeated hits. When a round finally pierced its ammunition rack, the tank erupted. Villagers remembered the fire for months. War machines were mighty, but even giants could fall. Chapter 3. The Desert of Iron. By 1941, the war had spread beyond Europe. In the scorching sands of North Africa, tanks became creatures of dust and heat. Their engines choked on sandstorms. Their crews baked inside hulls hot enough to cook metal. But here, in this hostile wilderness, legends were born. Lieutenant Lucas Weber, now seasoned, scarred, and hardened, found himself deployed under the command of a general whose reputation echoed through the Axis ranks, Erwin Rommel, the Desert Fox. Weber's Panzer III belonged to the Afrika Korps, battling British Matilda and cruiser tanks across landscapes that seemed endless. The British had their own rising star, Lieutenant Thomas Brackett, commander of a cruiser MKV-6 Crusader. Though young, he had a sharp mind and an unwavering sense of duty. Their paths crossed during the Battle of Gazala. The desert was a canvas of smoke pillars and fire blossoms. Shells burst like thunder in the dunes. Weber maneuvered his panzer behind a ridge, scanning for enemy armor. "There!" shouted the gunner. "Crusader tank, bearing north." Weber saw it, sleek, fast, painted in desert camouflage. Its turret swiveled toward them. Both tanks fired simultaneously. Both missed. They closed the distance, trading shots like ancient gladiators. The Crusader darted across the sands with fluid speed. The Panzer III moved with calculated precision. A shell from Brackett's gun slammed into the German tank's track, disabling movement. Weber cursed. "We're stuck." Inside the Crusader, Brackett steadied his breathing. "Target them carefully. We finish this now." The Crusader aimed. But before it could fire, an explosion erupted beside them. Another German tank had intervened. Dust engulfed the battlefield. When it cleared, the Crusader was forced to retreat, its engine damaged. Neither commander forgot the encounter. War was won in seconds, but survival depended on fate. Chapter 4. Steel in the Snow. As the desert battles raged, another front had opened, a brutal, freezing, unforgiving expanse, the Eastern Front. Here, in the snows of Russia, armored warfare reached its most monstrous scale. Sergeant Alexander Morozov, commander of a Soviet T-34, felt the cold bite through even the thickest layers of wool as he prepared for combat near the outskirts of Moscow. His tank rumbled forward, exhaust pipes spitting steam into the frigid air. Around him, dozens of T-34s advanced, simple, rugged, deadly machines that could traverse mud and snow where German tanks sank helplessly. Ahead lay the invaders. Panzer IVs and assault guns fired from behind barricades of ice and debris. The ground shook with artillery. Morozov ordered full speed. His T-34 slammed into German lines like a hammer of steel. Shells ricocheted off its sloped armor, one of the tank's greatest strengths. The crew felt each impact like a fist to the chest. "Gunner, right side, fire." A German Panzer III exploded. Another shot clipped Morozov's tank, denting the hull but failing to penetrate. The T-34 advanced relentlessly. But war had no mercy. A hidden German 88mm anti-tank gun opened fire. Its shell ripped through the T-34's side, killing Artyom, the loader. Morozov screamed for medics that would never come. Still, he fought on. The Soviets held the line. Moscow did not fall, and the legend of the T-34 grew. Chapter V. The Monster Machines. By 1943, tank designers on all sides sought bigger guns, thicker armor, and greater power. The age of medium tanks gave way to beasts of steel. Germany introduced the Tiger I armored fortress with an 88mm cannon. It could destroy enemy tanks at distances where they could barely scratch its paint. At the Battle of Kursk, the largest tank battle in history, Tigers, Panthers, T-34s, and thousands of armored vehicles clashed in a storm of fire and shattered metal. The battlefield near Prokhorovka was a sea of smoke. Burning wrecks littered the plains. Engines roared, cannons thundered, crews shouted orders through choking fumes. Lucas Weber, now commanding a Panther tank, advanced with his unit into the carnage. His gunner spotted a formation of T-34s closing fast. "We're outnumbered. We fight anyway," Weber replied. The Panther fired. One T-34 burst into flames. Another lost its track. But the Soviets pressed forward, undeterred by losses. A T-34 rammed Weber's Panther, shaking the crew. "Back up! BACKU up!" Weber screamed. Shells erupted around them. Fire curled across the hull. They were being surrounded. And then, a monstrous shape appeared behind the German lines. A Tiger I. Its cannon fired with the force of a thunderbolt. Soviet tanks exploded one after another. For a moment, it seemed the German steel monsters would break the Soviet lines. But quantity overwhelmed quality. For every Tiger, there were 10 T-34s. By nightfall, the German attack stalled. And Kursk marked the beginning of the end for the Nazi war machines. Chapter VI's Shadows over Normandy. In 1944, as German armor struggled on the Eastern Front, another catastrophe unfolded, the Allied landings in Normandy. Lieutenant Thomas Brackett, now a veteran, commanded a Sherman Firefly, the British variant armed with the deadly 17-pounder gun. The Shermans were fast and reliable, but against Tigers and Panthers they were fragile. Ronsons, the crews called them, after gasoline lighters that ignited too easily. Still, they had one advantage: numbers. On June 7th, during the push inland from the beaches, Brackett's Firefly moved cautiously through hedgerow country, known as the Bocage, a maze of natural walls perfect for ambushes. A Tiger tank lay hidden beyond a crossroads. Brackett spotted it first. "Hold! Tiger ahead!" The Sherman crew tensed. The Tiger's turret turned toward them. "Fire!" Brackett yelled. The Firefly's gun cracked like a lightning bolt. Its armor-piercing shell streaked across the hedgerows and plunged straight through the Tiger's thick frontal plate. The German behemoth shuddered, fire bursting from its hatches. Brackett exhaled shakily. For all its power, even a tiger could fall to the right shot. Chapter 7. The Last Days of Iron. By early 1945, the war machines that once dominated continents were reduced to desperate shadows of their former might. Fuel was scarce. Ammunition was limited. Crews were exhausted or inexperienced. The Third Reich's armored divisions, once feared across Europe, were crumbling. Lucas Weber, now commanding an aging Tiger II in the defense of Berlin, felt the weight of inevitability pressing upon him. His machine was nearly out of shells. His crew was half-starved. The streets were filled with rubble and civilians running for shelter. Soviet IS-2 heavy tanks approached from the outskirts, their cannons blazing. Weber knew the war was lost. But he also knew he had a duty: protect the civilians fleeing past his tank. "Hold position," he ordered. "We buy them time." The Tiger II fired until its ammunition bins were empty. It destroyed 3 IS-2s, crippled another. But soon, enemy infantry swarmed the area. A Soviet shell tore through the Tiger's side. Weber's world flipped in a burst of fire. Weber's our demisphere. As smoke filled the turret, he pulled himself from the hatch. He collapsed onto the street, gasping for air, watching as the war machine that carried him through 6 years of conflict turned into a funeral pyre. The age of panzers, the age of German armored might had ended. Chapter 8. Ruins and Remembrance. When the guns finally fell silent in 1945, the war machines were left scattered across Europe, Africa, and Asia, burning wrecks, abandoned hulks, heaps of rusting metal baking beneath the sun. Some were dragged into museums. Some were melted down into peacetime tools. Others were left to rot in forests and fields, reclaimed by nature. Lieutenant Thomas Brackett survived the war. Years later, he visited a museum in London where a Tiger tank sat on display, its armor dented, its paint faded. He stared at it for a long time, not with hatred, not with triumph, but with understanding. "These machines changed everything," he whispered, "and nearly destroyed us all." Alexander Morozov returned to his village in Russia, now a tank commander turned farmer. He kept a small piece of T-34 armor on his shelf as a reminder of the price of survival. And Lucas Weber, one of the few from Germany who lived, spent his later years telling students that war machines were not glorious things. They were tools. Tools that could protect or annihilate. Tools that magnified human courage and human cruelty alike. Epilogue. The Legacy of Armored Shadows. The war machines of World War II did not vanish. They evolved into modern armor, into new doctrines, into weapons more advanced and more terrifying. But the shadows they cast remain fixed in history. The Panzer, the T-34, the Sherman, the T-34, the Sherman, the T-34, the Sherman, the Tiger. These titans of steel shaped the fate of nations. They brought victory to some and ruin to others. They carved fire across deserts, snowfields, valleys, and cities. And though decades have passed, their echoes can still be heard in the rumble of engines on distant fields, in the lessons studied by soldiers and historians, and in the memories of those who survived their rise and fall. For in the end, war machines do not wage war. People do, and it is people who must carry the weight of the armored shadows they unleash.